Welcome to the Good and Plenty podcast. I am your host, Jeff Goodman, joined today by my co-host / producer, Chris Grenham, and I'm joining you here from lovely Fredericksburg, Virginia, Chris, in a hotel. Made a little trip here, went to the Maryland-Nebraska game a couple nights ago, flew in, and then had to do a game for Stadium. Little Marshall at ODU, had never been to, and it's pronounced, I want to make sure I get it right, Norfolk,
Virginia. That's right.
Norfolk, Virginia. And great game. And it was, honestly, it was refreshing for me to do a mid-major game. I just hadn't done a lot of them at ESPN, and I'll say it all the time, my favorite game that I've ever been to was Butler at Southern Illinois back when Brad Stevens was a rookie head coach.
There you go.
And I haven't gone to a ton of these mid-major games, and I don't know, there's a purity about it. There's a purity about covering a mid-major basketball game where most of the kids understand they're probably not going to play in the NBA. Maybe they play overseas.
Yeah.
They're happy to talk to you. Like, John Elmore is one of my favorite kids I've ever been around. And he's a kid from Marshall, for people who don't know, who I wrote a story on like 4 years ago, transferred from BMI. Anyway, just a great kid, great venue, everything like that. But let me take care of some quick housekeeping business first.
Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. It's never a bad time to start thinking about your investment portfolio. Whether you're looking to buy or sell stocks, crypto, ETFs, make sure you sign up for Robinhood. And I know markets can be complicated, but Robinhood makes everything easy for you. Robinhood's going to build your own customized newsfeed right when you sign up. They sort certain stocks for you in different collections like the 100 most popular or social media or pharmaceutical, and you'll learn more about it as you go along. Get started today. Sign up is extremely easy. All it takes is 4 taps on your phone to start trading. Best part is, Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. You keep all your profits. Robinhood is giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Sign up at plenty.robinhood.com. That's plenty.robinhood.com.
Good and Plenty podcast, as you know, every Tuesday and Thursday. Forgive me for my throat and how I sound today. Still battling a little bit of a cold, cough, whatever you want to call it. You can subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, go to CLNS Media. You can go to find me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, Chris?
At Chris Grenham, just my name.
Tough one. And you can also find me, obviously, on watchstadium.com, which is where I did the game last night, myself and Noah Kozlov. And it was the first game I'd ever done as an analyst, straight as an analyst with nobody else. You know, I did the San Diego State game a month or so ago, but it was, play-by-play guy, Gottlieb, and me. And, if you know Gottlieb, that means he's going to get most of the – and he should, most of the words in.
Right.
So this one was fun for me. I had a blast. It was a great game. Last-second shot for Marshall to win it at ODU. And
nice game winner.
Yeah, it was just a good game to call and plenty of storylines. There's a kid, honestly, that people need to watch. I talked to an NBA guy driving from Norfolk to Fredericksburg last night. I'm flying back out of Baltimore. So after this podcast, I'm hustle my ass off, and I'm going to try to make a 1:15 flight. We're recording this on Friday morning. Kid named Tavion Kingsey. And it's a name you're going to want to know. He's a freshman. He's about 6'5", maybe, long, 42-inch vertical, from Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State didn't give him a sniff. I'm going to call Chris Holtman later today. And
let him know he missed out.
Yeah, I think so. I think this kid could be a pro. Now,
he's pretty versatile. I was checking him out after you tweeted about him last night. He's pretty versatile.
Yeah, I mean, not a great shooter yet, but played the point in high school.
Yep.
Spent the last 2 days learning the 4 in practice and had an energy, plays hard, smart kid. It's going to take him time. He's not a 1 and done or 2 and done or any of that, but I think he's got a bright future. And it's always fun being around Dan D'Antoni, who I ripped, by the way, when he got hired. Ripped it. Said NBA people killed him, killed the hire. I had people, Conference USA coaches, kind of laughing about the hire. And I remember putting out a tweet in 2014 to that very tune of like, Dan D'Antoni, terrible hire, and got him the NCAA tournament last year, and they've been struggling this year. But anyway, let's move on to some topics, national topics. I just wanted to let people know like how great mid-major basketball is.
It's the best.
Like, that's
find
the
hidden
thing.
gems. Also, how about that shirt that Dan D'Antoni had on, the Hillbilly Ball T-shirt? If anyone from Marshall is listening, I'll buy one. Just name your price. I'll buy one. That's a phenomenal T-shirt.
Yeah, I'm gonna find out, and on the next pod we'll have the answer to that. Where you can, I'm gonna buy one too. I
need one of those.
They're awesome, and
a great
that's
look
the
with the sport coat over the Hillbilly Ball T-shirt. That was a phenomenal look.
He just doesn't care. 71 years old, just doesn't. And I don't think he's ever cared. The best thing was I asked him, I'm like, well, what's the big difference between being an NBA assistant coach with your brother for a while and being a college coach? He's like, during the games I actually do something. Like in the NBA, he goes, I literally just sat there and yawned, and I had no role during the game. Yeah, no role whatsoever during the games. So there's no BS with either D'Antoni. And the funny part was, he goes before the start of the season, he goes, my brother kept telling me to play small. And remember, Dan only got the job because Mike turned it down. They tried to go after Mike. Obviously, they weren't going to get him, but he was unemployed at the time. They tried to go after him. They're Marshall guys. So he said Mike called him before the season and said, go small, play the kid Kinsey at the 4. And Dan didn't do it. He went with like a 6'9", 350-pound dude instead. And the kid got hurt. This kid, Ira Bennett, just got hurt, broke his foot. So he had no choice but to go with Kinsey. And now he's like, all right, I guess I should have done this sooner.
Yeah. So you want to jump over to a little Pac-12 talk, your favorite conference in the world?
I'm embarrassed to say I'm a Pac-12 guy. Like, I can't even say it with a straight face now.
But I don't know if this is crazy. Tell me if I'm crazy by saying this. In the last couple months, I've paid more attention to the Pac-12 conference as it's in its dumpster fire state than I have in the last 3 or 4 years. Is that crazy to say?
Yeah, because again, usually it's okay enough that you're paying attention to a couple teams.
Right, Arizona.
But you're not sticking with most of it. Now you're almost like interested to see, like, especially in the non-conference, like, when's the next loss? Like,
exactly.
When's the next joke of a loss?
Right. I'm looking for the next loss. I got Steve Alford getting canned, Bol Bol's injury. There's just so many depressing topics. I've been more intrigued by the conference this year in its bad state than I have in the last couple of years.
And you got some people hitting me. Arizona State, the latest one was Arizona State loses to Utah. So now it's like, well, if a Pac-12 team loses, you can't hammer it because another Pac-12 team wins. And my take to that is like, Utah's not very good.
No.
They're not. We know that. We know that for a fact. And Larry Krzyzkowiak is a really good coach.
Sure.
But Utah doesn't have DeLon Wright or Jakob Poeltl or any pros or anything like that. They're a bottom-tier team in the Pac-12 for sure. Yeah. And Arizona State has no right losing at home. They're coming off losing to an Ivy League team.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, that's the thing is, I put out a tweet a few weeks ago saying, like, all right, the Pac-12 stinks, but when I say the Pac-12 stinks, I don't mean Arizona State. Now, I mean Arizona State too. I mean,
you have to, yeah. They're mid, like a bad hangover after that Kansas win. Those are tough back-to-back losses. They've got Colorado next, who, I don't know, that could be a tough game for them as well. But I don't know. I mean, this is a one bid league right now, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, like there's no.
I don't know how now, with Arizona State losing 3 of its last 4, 1 to Vandy on the road without Darius Garland. I don't think Vandy's a tournament team.
No,
I know. Then they beat Kansas. I don't know how the hell they did that, but Kansas, I think they were without Udoka. Like, Kansas still should have beaten them, I guess. And then you lose to Princeton and Utah at home.
Yeah,
like,
they're not.
I don't. No. And now, like, who's that team right now? Somebody would have to run away with the league, like one of those teams that's like got a chance. And there are a few that like have an outside chance right now, or Arizona State would have to turn it on.
Right.
which they don't look like they're capable of right now, or maybe, Washington. I just don't think there's a team good enough to run away in the league. I think the first place team is going to have, 4 or 5 losses, and you're legitimately going to go in the Pac. Maybe I should go to the Pac-12 tournament. Maybe it'll be the most intriguing tournament from a simple standpoint of like whoever wins it is the only team getting.
Yeah,
right?
It totally could be. Again, it's back to that thing where it's so ugly right now that it's intriguing, which sounds ridiculous, but it is.
You know what it becomes? A mid-major conference tournament.
Literally, that's exactly what it is.
How cool would that be if every team goes in and they have to deal with what all the mid-major coaches have to deal with, which is win 3 or you're done. Other than Buffalo, first of all, I would take Buffalo and its resume over like anybody basically in the Pac-12 right
100%. 100%.
Right? I mean, I hope they take other – and I know some schools haven't done enough in those mid-major leagues, but like I don't want to see any of these Pac-12 schools in there in an at-large situation.
There's no use in mine. I'd much rather see a Buffalo in an at-large situation. I would trust them more. I would trust their experience far more than any of these teams. And the inconsistency in the Pac-12 is brutal.
Like I'm looking for other mid-major teams, and there haven't been that many that have played their way in like Buffalo has, and they generally aren't, right? I mean, obviously you got Nevada, Nevada, something like that, who I don't even really consider a full-fledged. But like, I don't know, even I feel like a Belmont, a Murray State, like. I know Murray State doesn't have an unbelievable resume, but wouldn't you rather see John Morant in the NCAA tournament than anybody from the Pac-12?
Oh my God, I would pay to watch him over anyone from the Pac-12
right?
without question.
And I think you'd have people actually watching that game too. If you put it on the tournament, you'd have NBA people who cross over, who maybe not watch college basketball as much, and I think they would watch John Morant if you put Murray State on against. An ACC team. Murray State.
He's a must-watch alone. If for those of you who haven't watched him, you need to watch a Murray State game and get a look at him. He's unbelievably enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I wonder what the Pac-12. I mean, again, I thought it was clearly Arizona State, and now I'm questioning myself. Lou Dort, their freshman, who I love, has already hit the wall.
Yeah, or
maybe he just wasn't as good as we thought.
Maybe,
I don't know which it is. It could be a combination of the two. I love the kid, but he struggled. So again, Pac-12, man, you're right. Like, I'm not going to stay up for a lot of those games, to be honest. I'm just not. I'll stay up to watch some of them. UCLA, Arizona is still UCLA, Arizona, and I think people are going to be intrigued by UCLA just to kind of watch what happens next.
Like where do they go from here? Yeah, where do they go from here?
And how quickly do they move? Because you got 2 guys who are unemployed, who are kind of thrown out there, right? I still think it's going to be Fred Hoiberg at the end.
You do?
If you're putting a gun to my head and saying, like, who's the guy you think it's going to be, I'm going to go with Fred Hoiberg just because, the connections he's got to Wasserman, to Casey Wasserman, UCLA's biggest or one of their biggest boosters. I think you hire Fred, you get some pop at the news conference. And I think what's overstated is, well, Fred, he only got transfers. He only got transfers at Iowa State. Fred Hoiberg is smart enough to be able to go in and load up on high school kids, because you can't do that at UCLA. You're not going to take all these second-chance kids. But you're not going to have to. He had to do that at Iowa State. That's what people fail to realize. And I'm not saying Fred Hoiberg is like a 10 on a 1 to 10 list of who I would hire for UCLA. I've already put it out there that I think they should hire Bobby Hurley. They're not going to, but I think like that's the guy that I would hire. And I know obviously after losing 2 straight to Princeton and Utah, Bobby Hurley doesn't have as much luster. But Fred Hoiberg is a solid pick in a lot of regards. What he doesn't do is get his kids to play with like a ferocity that maybe you want to see at UCLA, a fight, a fire. That's not always him. He's obviously more, skill, scoring points. Listen, I don't think he should have gotten fired at Chicago this year. Maybe if you want to fire him last offseason, that's fine. But to fire him with all those guys this year was ridiculous.
Yeah, kind of ridiculous. And I mean, it hasn't gone so smoothly with Boylan following his firing. But
Right.
I agree. I think Hoiberg would be a good move. Obviously, he had a solid track record at Ohio State. I'm just a little – I mean, there's other names like Eric Musselman being thrown out there. But if you're Musselman, would you leave Nevada for – I feel like a lot of the –
In 2 seconds, Chris. In 2 seconds. He'd
you
walk.
would leave.
Oh, yeah. He'd walk from Reno to – if you told him right now, like, I don't know how far that is. Probably what? I don't know. It's got to be like 6-hour drive or something like that.
Yeah.
If you told Musselman the only way you can have this job is like get a jug of water and start walking, he'd be there. He'd be there. Absolutely.
I'm just confused at people. I mean, of course, people throwing Tony Bennett into this conversation. UCLA has to make that call and they got to look into it, but I don't think he would go. I think a lot of people, they look at this UCLA program as that old school blue blood program, which it is still that, but it's not as glorious as a lot of people are saying it is. There's 6,500 people at these games. It's not as flashy as it used to be. I think it's going to take someone new like a Hoiberg or like an Earl Watson, like a younger guy to come in there and almost reinvent the program. I think people calling for Rick Pitino, insert Dick Vitale, calling for Rick Pitino to come in here wouldn't really change much of the aura around that program. I don't think that's what they need at all.
You can't hire Rick Pitino right now anyway, because the NCAA hasn't closed shop on Louisville. Right. So like if Dan Guerrero wants to hire, and Dan Guerrero is fairly plugged in with the NCAA because he's been on the committee. If he wanted to hire Pitino and he called over to the NCAA and said like, what's the latest? They would say like, well, we haven't interviewed Brian Bowen Sr. We haven't done some of the things that we need to do to be able to close up the whole Brian Bowen, Louisville, some of the allegations involving their former assistants, Kenny Johnson. So I don't think they could hire Rick Pitino right now, even if they wanted to, because it's too much of a risk not having all the information. So I would knock Pitino out right away. I think I can't even remember what the Dan Dockett's tweet was. Did you see that one?
Oh my gosh, that was remarkable. That was pretty incredible. And
I guess it was real, Chris. Like I really thought Dan, and I've worked with Dan before, and we got along very well up until about a year ago when he came after me on a broadcast. He actually went after me, like argued
really?
with me and tried to belittle me in a game at PK-80. I was doing it was the Ohio State Stanford game, and Chris Holtmann was they were beating Stanford, beating the crap out of them by 30 early in the second half. And Chris Holtmann, his next game was going to be against Butler, who we coached for the last 3 years.
Right.
And Dockich was saying, well, it's going to be really, really hard for Holtmann to go up against his former team, program, and everything like that. And I jumped in and I was like, it shouldn't be that hard. Like, he left the program in a way better state 3 years later. He left for twice the money. Like, he has nothing to feel bad about.
No,
like,
not at all.
Playing your former players, I guess there's obviously an emotional attachment. So then he just went after me. Like, what do you media guys know? You're an idiot. Like, literally called me an idiot on the air, and then called me a sideline guy. And I took the high road.
Yeah, well, this is the same guy who tweeted out. This was the tweet. This was his list. Who, if he's UCLA, this is who Dan Dockich is calling. He's calling John Calipari, Rick Pitino, Steve Kerr, Tom Izzo, and Billy Donovan. I mean, that is one hell of a list.
I mean, the dumbest list you could put together. And let me start with the dumbest one ever. Is Bob Myers is running the search, running the search with Dan Guerrero. He's going to
go after his own. He's going to go after Steve Kerr.
Right. First of all, he doesn't have to call him. He can just walk down the hall.
He just walk into his office, walk down the hall.
Hey, Steve, what do you think about leaving, the job that you're at where I'm your boss and going to UCLA where, by the way, Steve Kerr, like the only job he'd ever go to in college, and he's not even going to go there, is Arizona where he went to school.
He wouldn't go.
He's never going to go to the rival UCLA.
Yeah. Imagine trying to pitch the UCLA job to Steve Kerr.
Or Calipari. Yeah, Calipari's going to take a pay cut. If you know John Calipari's never going to take a pay cut, which he's going to have to do. Even if you paid him the same amount of money, it's a major pay cut because you're going from the cost of living in Lexington, Kentucky to LA. Oh yeah,
that's
what
perfect. That's a great move. The best response to that tweet was, I saw you responded to it too, was an updated list. It was from Barstool Pros and Joes was the Twitter account, but it was Coach K, Greg Popovich, Phil Jackson, Bill Belichick, and Barack Obama. So
you know who runs that account?
Who?
You don't know who runs that Barstool Joes and Pros account? I think I'm almost positive that's Frank Kaminsky.
Oh no! Oh, you're right. That is his show. You're right.
That's his deal.
You're 100% right. That's
Frank
his
and
podcast.
Doc are not boys by any means.
That's his podcast. I completely forgot about that. You're right.
Frank is
Shout out to Frank, because that was a remarkable tweet. That was
because Frank's so smart and witty. He's just so
he's
smart
quick as hell.
And let me say something. Listen, one thing I will say is, like, I do respect Dan Dakich a lot for having an opinion and saying it. I've always said that. Like, I think Dan is right about a lot of things. And I love his son. His son, I feel bad because a lot of people, Dakich just pisses off a lot of people, especially in the media. Yeah. And his son, Andrew Dakich, is a great kid. Not a good kid, unbelievable kid. Now a GA at Ohio State. Had an unbelievable year last year for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, he did.
As a kid that was coming in and nobody thought would even play at Ohio State. So anyway, enough with Dan Dakich. We don't need to waste our time.
Here's my last question about the UCLA coaching position, and then we'll wrap this up. It's very unlikely, but what would you think about bringing in a guy like Earl Watson? Obviously, he played for UCLA. He's, I think, 38 or 39. He had a really short stint in Phoenix, but he's got to have it. He's got no experience in college coaching, but he's got to have a decent recruiting base in LA. What would you think about bringing him in, even though it's pretty unlikely?
Well, and I think it is fairly unlikely from what I'm told that he's down the list at least. So maybe they have to strike out on some guys before they go to Earl Watson. What you have to know is Earl Watson is kind of plugged into the AAU scene a little bit.
He is.
He's got teams. He's got program out there. He's had it for a while.
Yep.
So I like that part of it. I'm not going to completely crush it because I don't know Earl that well. I know a bunch of former UCLA guys are coming out saying hire Earl Watson or hire, or Alonzo Ball comes out, and it's like, all right, Lonzo, like, we're not going. And I love Lonzo. I think Lonzo's super smart, and on the court, off the court, I think Lonzo's a smart kid. But like, no, you're not the AD. You're not hiring here. You don't know the other candidates. You don't know who's available, who's not. I think that's what UCLA. If I'm Dan Guerrero and Bob Myers and Chris Carlson and their senior associate AD, who's also involved, I'm making as many calls behind the scenes. I'm talking to all the agents. I'm talking to Tony Bennett's agent. I know he's probably not going, but absolutely I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to work on, Mike Bray, who's a little bit older, 59, probably not going to go there, but I'm told that it's a long shot. But I'm going to call all the agents and say, all right, who do you have on your roster that would be interested? I'm going to write down the names. I'm going to ask them about some names, big boy names. Again, Mark Few's not coming, but you got to make the call.
You got to make the call, Yeah,
make the call to his agent and just make sure that there's no level of interest. And then when you go through the names and you see, okay, here's the group that we're looking at, you then compare them to Fred Hoiberg. You then compare them to Earl Watson. Yeah. Another name that was brought up to me that's really intriguing. I don't think I'd do it. How about this name? Jeff Van Gundy.
Whoa, I've not. That's interesting.
Just out of nowhere, like, again, I was just talking to somebody else who was involved, former UCLA guy, and we were just shooting the shit about names, and he brought it up to me. He's like, what do you think about Jeff Van Gundy? And I'm like, yeah, I don't hate it. I don't love it again.
I'm not throwing it out the window, though.
Right. If Hoiberg hires a good staff, gets after it a little bit more than he did at Iowa State, I think he's a solid 8.
Hoiberg would be my top choice, I think. But just because of the change in the guard, I think Earl Watson isn't as bad of a choice as some people are saying. But again, you got to make the calls to guys like Mike Bray, Mark Few, Jamie Dixon. You make the calls. I mean, of course you do. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Another program where it'll be interesting to see where they go from here is Oregon. Of course, Bol Bol is out for the remainder of the year now after having surgery. He had 2 screws put in a bone. Just nasty, really unfortunate end because assuming he'll enter the NBA draft, he's going to start preparing for that when he returns to basketball activities this summer. What do you think that does for his draft stock? A lot of guys were split on him to begin with. I was, on the fence. I didn't really know what to think of him before this. Obviously, it depends on how his rehab goes. He's starting that next week. But what do you think it does with his draft stock? I know you had him pretty high on your list.
I did. And the last thing that Bol Bol needed was another red flag.
Exactly.
Like that's my big thing with Bol Bol was, as it was, he was a guy who divided NBA executives in a sense that some really liked him and thought like he is a unicorn. I mean, he's 7'2". He shoots the ball well from the perimeter. He's not like his dad, Manute, who was kind of, just, I don't want to say a freak show, but like just out there jacking threes and couldn't really make them.
Right.
Would stand out there and what it was like playing 4 and 5 offensively. Like Bol Bol can play offensively. He's skilled.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, he's legitimately multidimensional on the offensive side. And
he can be a game changer at the college level defensively. Now, I worry about him, obviously, in a sense that, he weighs like 230 pounds and he's got no base whatsoever. You can just toss him around. I think you and I could toss Bol Bol around.
Yeah.
Okay.
7'3", 235 isn't a great base.
How do you play him in the NBA? And I don't think he can gain weight. I mean, that's the hard part for Bol Bol. Some guys you can put on some weight on him. Bol Bol, I don't know how you do it. How do you play him in the NBA? And now to add to that, plus the questionable attitude. And
his motor really concerns me.
It doesn't run. It doesn't really run very often. When it does, he's fun. He's fun to watch, and I want to like him. I remember going up to him last year at the McDonald's game, and he was hurt, and saying to him, like, Bol, here's the deal. You're not going to play in the McDonald's game, but all those NBA guys that are out in the stands watching you this week in practice and in the game, they're going to be watching how you are as a teammate. So be the first one up for all your team, all your teammates, clapping for them, giving them high fives, all that.
Yeah,
he didn't do it.
That show of enthusiasm and just effort is so key, and it's just not there. And it is sometimes, but it's rare, and that's the part that really, really concerns me. You add in a foot injury like this to that, and I don't think it's a good mix at all.
And then you go, and that's the NBA end of it, obviously. Yeah. And you go the Oregon end of it, and we've hit the Pac-12 hard here. And this is like a Pac-12 podcast.
Oh man, and I'm normally this East Coast bias. I don't pay attention to West Coast basketball, but it's intriguing.
It is. So Oregon, Dane Altman gets Lewis King back like a few weeks ago, his other McDonald's All-American freshman, and now he loses Bol Bol, and we'll see. Maybe they could be better. Again, Bol Bol's a guy that when I talked to Dane Altman, I said like, what's it like coaching a guy like Bol Bol? And he admitted, he's like, I've never really coached anybody like this before. Like his best players have always been guards, like Mitch Richmond back at Kansas State and Kyle Korver at Creighton. Yeah. So he was trying to figure out how to utilize Bol Bol and be most effective with him. And now it's over. I mean, season's over. He's going to the NBA, and it is. I'm telling you, talk about a guy who is the ultimate wild card. And where he goes in the draft, and then if he goes in the draft, like, is he going to be productive at all? Like, he's that guy that, to me, is either you're going to hit it or you're going to completely miss. There's no in between. Really bad,
none at all.
There's no in between with Bol Bol. Like, it's not like he's going to stay in the league for 12 years and be a good sixth man. Like, I don't ever see that. Either he's going to be, like, out of the league in 5 years, or somebody will figure out a way to utilize him. He'll get stronger. He'll be in the right situation, maybe learn to play hard. And can he be like a pick and pop four on the offensive end? I mean, the one thing you can't teach is size, and he's got that, man. He's skilled. He is skilled.
I don't know if I'm a team in the top 10, you add in this injury now. I was already on the fence about him at first. Now you add in this foot injury. I don't know if I see him go. I see him going as high as, I don't know, 10 maybe, because you got a lot of sure things up here with guys like DeAndre Hunter and the trio from Duke. Like, I don't see. I would even at this point take Nazir Little, Rui Hachimura. I would take all of those guys. Maybe even Nikhil Alexander Walker, Romeo Langford. I like all those guys over Bol Bol at this point. I could see him dropping into the teens easily.
I'm with you 1,000%. I think it's going to be a team. Maybe your Celtics will take him. They got eight
they
picks.
got a lot of picks in there. I mean, if they can use a project pick, why not? If you got one. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you take him, you throw him in the G League, you put him with a coach that can work with him, you hire somebody to live with him,
right?
And you say to yourself, if you got a pick in the 20 range, and you got, like the Celtics are going to have potentially 4, probably more likely like 3, I think, all in the
I think that's most likely,
right? All in the range of like 10 to 25.
10 to 25, yeah, that's the range right there, and they're one of few teams in the league that have that luxury of being able to take their time with a prospect.
Oh, no doubt.
Not relying on him to play right away. So that would be an ideal fit for him. I think if Bol Bol lands with if he lands with a team that's going to try and play him immediately, I think it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Would you be excited to see the one-on-one matchups between big Robert Williams and Bol Bol?
Holy hell, the length in that matchup would be just ridiculous.
Like
oh my God. That would be remarkable.
Games.
That would be remarkable. I would pay to watch that. That would be awesome. But again, you go back to what you said. He's got no base. A guy like Robert Williams, I think, would just beat the crap out of him.
I think he would too.
And Robert Williams isn't that built compared to a lot of NBA guys. So then you put Bol Bol in a matchup with another NBA guy or a full-grown G Leaguer. Yep. I mean, I just don't trust those matchups, man.
Quick break to tell you today's show is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. There's nothing better about the holiday season than unwrapping a brand new phone until you get hit with your brand new monthly bill. Big wireless providers can really suck the joy out of the holidays. So this year, don't just upgrade your phone, upgrade your wireless provider and switch to Mint Mobile. For a limited time, Mint Mobile is offering the best holiday deal in wireless you've ever seen. 3 months of service for only $20. Mint Mobile's holiday deal is here for a limited time. $20 total gets you 3 months of wireless service with 5 gigabytes of 4G LTE data each month, plus unlimited talk and text. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can keep your old phone number along with all your existing contacts. Mint Mobile runs on the nation's fastest, most advanced LTE network. And if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with their 7-day money-back guarantee. Take advantage of this Mint Mobile holiday deal before it's gone. Get 3 months of wireless for $20 and get the plan shipped to your door for free by going to mintmobile.com/good. That's mintmobile.com/good. 3 months of service, just $20 at mintmobile.com/good.
All right, so we cannot finish this podcast without giving my guy Greg St. Jean and St. John some love.
Johnny's.
Right?
Yes.
We have to give them some love. They've finally beaten somebody. And they really should have beaten
They should have beaten Seton Hall. They should be undefeated.
They got screwed. They got the ultimate host job with the refs in the Seton Hall game. They lose in a game they should have won at Seton Hall at the Prudential Center. But then they bounce back. And I give them credit. Like Shamori Pons really bounced back. Mustafa Heron. I like this team. All right. Let me first say, can I first go back to people think I just hammer St. John's. Like I don't like St. John's. All right, let me set the record straight here. Number one, love Chris Mullin. Love him. Like one of my favorite players growing up. I was a Big East guy growing up at an age where Chris Mullin was like unbelievable for St. John's. Unbelievable. Like him as a guy. Really like him. Now, when he got hired the first year or so, I would make fun of them a lot more than I do now because Chris Mullin would just kind of be – it was like he was out for a walk in the park, and he was just sitting on the
He was the assistant to Greg St. Jean.
Correct. You had a 20 – I believe Greg St. Jean was probably like 26 at the time.
Yeah.
Who was hired from being like a workout guy maybe with the Kings. You know, Mullin knew Greg pretty well from their NBA ties and from his dad, from St. Jean's dad, Gary St. Jean, and hires him. And it's like Greg St. Jean is coaching the team. He's in the huddle, drawing up the plays out of his mind, like passionate, intense, won't shut up. And I'm sitting behind at a game at the Mohegan Sun. I had seen this already on TV a little bit, and I'm like, I got to see this firsthand. So I'm like sitting in like the front row. I got to see this for myself. And he is. He's drawing up the plays, 26-year-old. God bless him. And I'm watching Mullen, and he's just like, it's like he's not even there.
It was pretty remarkable in the early going.
Yeah.
It was like Mullen wasn't even trying to hide it. He was just letting St. Jean take the reins. And it was pretty cool to see, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was just having some fun with it, and St. John's fans. And also, listen, I will say, and I'm like this with most former NBA guys that have $100 million or whatever Mullen probably has in his bank account, I am always a little bit skeptical of those guys grinding it enough to get their alma maters back. And it's not just Chris Mullen, but it's Patrick Ewing. It's, Penny Hardaway. His deal's a little different because he was an AAU and a high school coach. So I think he already knew the grind a little bit and didn't have to be surprised by it. So I was not like 100% in of like Chris Mullen's going to kill it at St. John's. I was like, let's see his staff. Let's see if he can coach.
Right.
And this thing has not been good. Let's be honest. Like, it's not like St. John's has lit the world on fire here for the first 3 years, right?
It hasn't been pretty at all.
I mean, year one, I think they won like 8 games overall. And I think they won a game in the Big East. It's gotten progressively better the last couple of years. Last year, they beat Duke and Villanova.
Right. And before those 2 wins, it was not pretty.
They lost, I think, 11 in a row. 11 in a row.
Yeah.
So they were already out of it. So, again, they've got a team now. They were very fortunate. Okay, they got Mustafa Heron,
right,
transfer from Auburn, and they got him eligible immediately. Like, the waiver rule has changed lately. It wasn't the case a few years ago. The NCAA had said, like, we're done with these hardship waivers. And all of a sudden, they've kind of allowed a lot of them back in. I don't know the rhyme or reason, but Mustafa Heron's mother, I'm told, like, had a concussion. And that's how he got eligible this year. If they don't have Mustafa Heron eligible this year, they're not much better than they've been. It's Shamori Pons and a bunch of good players. Like, Marvin Clark's having a good year. I love
Justin Simon's having a really good year too. Yeah, they've got some good. They've got some good initial depth there.
They're older. And LJ Figueroa,
right.
They've got to be old right now if you're St. John's, and they hit it in the right year because the Big East is not very good overall.
Right, it's a down year for them. Yeah, and it's a down year for the conference. The part that concerns me about St. John's is their lack of depth. Like, you get past those guys, Simon, Clark, and Figueroa, and there's not much else there. But at the top, they have Mustafa Heron and Shamori Pons, one of the best backcourts in the country.
Ooh, I love Pons. I gotta say, I know he can be.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah, he can be like sometimes a little bit of an enigma. Some of the shots he'll take, or he'll dribble 45 times in a possession. But I'll take Shamori Pons on my team, and he's
100%. I get people who get annoyed, but I've always been on the side of bucket getters, and he is a pure bucket getter. He's so much fun to watch, and you add in Heron alongside of him. In my opinion, that's a top 5 backcourt in the country. Yeah,
because again, they're older too, which helps.
They got some experience.
I think right now, are they for real? For real? Well, listen, they're 13-1. They just beat the crap out of Marquette. Now, it's at home, but whatever. You got to
still
like that's not the greatest matchup for Marquette because Marquette's not the toughest team in the world. St. John's wanted that game, but showed a lot of mental toughness, bouncing back from that Seton Hall loss.
Yep.
And playing the way they did against Marquette. And again, listen, if they can beat Marquette at home, they should be able to beat every team in the league at home.
They really should be able to, yeah. And I mean, Carnesecca has been a house of horrors for the rest of the Big East. So it's a shame they don't play every home game at Carnesecca, honestly. But I don't know. I still think Marquette is the best team in this conference right now. They can score with anyone, but I'm waiting for Villanova to come around. I mean, Seton Hall is really good. So like you said, it is a down year for the conference. But shout out to St. John's, man. They've been really good so far. I've really liked what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, DePaul pushes Villanova.
Yeah.
Butler loses by 30 to Florida. This season is just, other than the top 5 or so teams, we're going to see a lot of games that we just are surprised about the result. Like the other night, I went to Maryland, Nebraska in College Park. And that was one that I thought was like a flip of the coin going in. And it was because, to me, Maryland's got 2 bigs that are pros. Bruno Fernando
is awesome.
I watched him in person. I'm like, God, this kid just plays so hard and with so much emotion. I'm a huge fan. He's gotten better. Like he's got moves in the post, counter moves. He can up and under. Like he can score. Where Mark Turgeon told me he couldn't catch the ball when he first got there. And Jalen Smith sticks is he was down early in that game, but he came back and made some huge plays down the stretch. The key for me is Anthony Cowan and their point guard play. He's not really playing like a point, which he was when I saw him in AAU. So now it's this kid Ayala's kind of handling the ball a little
Eric
bit more.
Ayala, he's been a good primary ball handler for them. I mean, Jalen Smith and Bruno Fernando are 100% NBA players. Like I love the way both those guys play. But if Eric Ayala can continue to kind of act as a primary ball handler with Cowan playing the way he is, I think they could put together a pretty good season here. Again, the Big Ten is loaded, so I don't know how it's going to go for them down the stretch. But either way, I do like what Turgeon is doing there so far this year.
Yeah, Tim Miles talked to him for a while before the game, and he doesn't. You watch their team in person, you're like, they're good, they're not great. James Palmer can really, really score the ball. Probably maybe the best scorer in the league. Mm-hmm. Does he have enough help? Now, again, they played with Maryland on the road and had a chance to win the game, so that's a good sign. And I think, he'll get off the hot seat. I think he'll win enough games at Nebraska that they'll have to make a decision. Is this going to be our coach for the future?
For the next couple of years, yeah.
If he gets in the tournament again, I think that's 2 out of 6 years or 7 years. Like, you're at Nebraska.
Yeah, come on.
You got no recruiting base, no tradition.
It's a football
lock
school.
him in.
Right.
And he's likable. He's got the right personality for that because he doesn't care about football being the number one sport. He gets it.
Right.
And if I'm Tim Miles, I'm saying, like, if you don't give me a long-term extension here, like, I'm going to go. Like, somebody else is going to hire him. Yeah, and he'll get something else. He can get a really good mid-major job or somewhere else. But I think they're a tournament team for sure. And the Big Ten is such that it's just going to be interesting because you can lose to anybody. And I think you can beat – like, Michigan is good, but I'm still not sold they're an elite top 5 team. And
yeah, I'm not either. I mean, I could see a team like Nebraska with that veteran group of Copeland, Roby, Palmer, Watson. They could beat a team like Michigan on any night. It's that
they're
just
men.
Right.
They're men.
Right, exactly.
They're older. That's their big advantage for Nebraska. Yep. You have to be old, and this is the year for Tim Miles. And for Turgeon, they're young at Maryland, and a lot of people are on Mark Turgeon. A lot of people are saying, like, he hasn't done enough at Maryland, which is a top 10-ish job in the country. He hasn't done enough. He got to Sweet 16, but, like, have they done enough to be relevant and have a team that could, like, make a Final Four run? Now, if you add Kevin Huerter to this year's team, you might be saying, all right, like, this team has a chance to
right. That would make a difference. Yeah, people were knocking him after the win against Nebraska because that was their first win against a ranked opponent in 3 years. But again, they're young, and I don't think he should be. He's on the hot seat like a lot of people are saying. I don't know. People are putting a lot of pressure on that program.
Yeah, they are. All right. Well, listen. Appreciate everybody joining us again for another edition of Good and Plenty. Again, we will find out where you can get those Hillbilly Ball T-shirts from Dan D'Antoni.
Need one. Yes.
Yeah, we need them. We're going to spike the sales.
Yeah, we'll spike the sales. If I can find a merchandise link, I'll put the link in the bio.
They tweeted it to me. So look at my tweets during the game. A couple places I think tweeted it to us, me or Noah Kozlov, who I did the game with, so we can help you in that regard. But trust me,
the link will be in the bio. Yeah, that's perfect.
Hillbilly Ball is here to stay in Marshall. So again, thanks for joining us. You can subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, go to CLNS Media. Late Happy New Year again to everybody. You can find me on Twitter at Goodman Hoops. You can find Chris on Twitter at Chris Grenham. And you can obviously find my work on watchstadium.com. So, again, thanks for joining us. Another edition of Good and Plenty is in the books, and I'm out of here in lovely Fredericksburg, Virginia, to try to catch a flight to get home a little early. And then I may even watch a big game later today. My daughter goes to Pingree School now. She's a freshman. And one of her good friends is on the basketball team, so I think they play at 5. So I might surprise her and do a little scouting of the Pingree boys basketball team today.
Safe flight, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
sports fans. I'm Coach Nick of the B-Ball Breakdown podcast on the CLNS Media Network. I break down the NBA from a coach's perspective and have some of the best basketball minds join me weekly to discuss the latest NBA news and what's truly going on the court. Subscribe to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast wherever you get your podcasts or find us on clnsmedia.com. It's a great conversation. You in?